Hey everyone, and welcome back. So today we are diving into something that's causing like a lot of buzz online.
Yeah,
Polyamory.
lots of questions about it.
Yeah, you guys have sent a ton of articles and the Reddit threads. Oh my God.
Yeah, they're fired up about this one.
We're going to unpack this whole thing about when the desire for polyamory isn't exactly mutual.
Right.
When it becomes,
Right.
and one article put it this way, polyamory under duress.
It's really complex because polyamory is all about like open communication and honesty.
Yeah.
But then you read these Reddit stories and you see how murky the waters can get when one partner feels pressured
Totally.
or even coerced
Yeah.
into this relationship style they don't actually want.
And it's so interesting because right from the get-go, one Reddit user said, and this really struck me, they said, if you are monogamous and you want a one-on-one monogamous relationship, please say no to polyamory.
Yeah.
Which seems so obvious, but the fact that they had to say it.
It does. Like that really highlights
Yeah.
the almost societal pressure to be open to these non-monogamous relationships, as if it's like inherently more evolved or enlightened.
Yeah.
And that pressure makes it really difficult then for some people to say, actually, I want a monogamous relationship. My needs and my desires are for that.
Yeah. It's like this weird, like, are you evolved enough? Have you passed the test type of thing?
Right, exactly.
So then how do we differentiate like a genuine curiosity versus like almost like doing it as a favor
Right.
or feeling pressured?
I think the key difference is really about personal desire
Okay.
versus external pressure. So ethical polyamory, which should apply to any relationship model, thrives on mutual consent and enthusiasm.
Okay.
So it should never be about one partner coercing or even convincing the other.
Right.
It needs to be a joint decision.
Yeah. Ethical polyamory.
Right.
I'm really glad you said that. Can we, before we go any further, just define that? Make sure we're all like on the same page here.
Absolutely. So ethical polyamory is engaging in multiple romantic relationships.
Okay.
Openly and honestly. All parties involved have to consent. They know what's happening.
Got it.
And it's all based on clear communication, transparency, and this respect for everyone's emotional well-being.
Okay. So anything less than that, where you're feeling pressure or manipulation or being coerced, that's where we've crossed the line.
Exactly. And that happens more often
Really?
than you might think, because there's this misconception that just because someone identifies as polyamorous, they're automatically good at communication and setting those healthy boundaries.
Okay.
But these Reddit stories tell a very different story.
Oh, that's really interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's get into some of these Reddit threads. One that I read said it was like comparing it to being forced to eat something that you hate, even if it's good for you.
Okay.
So this person said, you wouldn't force yourself to learn how to cook chicken livers if you hate them, even if someone told you that they're better for you.
I love that analogy. It speaks to how just because something works for one person doesn't mean that it's right for you. Relationships aren't one size fits all.
Right.
We all have different needs and desires.
Totally. And ignoring those individual needs, especially just to try something new,
Yeah.
that's when things get messy, right?
Exactly. And that's often how you end up with relationship dysphoria, which one of the articles you sent me actually mentioned.
Yeah.
And it's where an individual feels deeply unhappy and unfulfilled in their relationship, but they feel trapped
Yes.
or pressured to stay.
Ugh. This relationship dysphoria, it's like this really heavy thing.
Yeah.
And it just seems to be like a theme in a lot of these Reddit stories.
Right.
Just people feeling trapped,
Yeah.
not heard.
Absolutely. And it often comes, I think, with these power imbalances when one partner is really into polyamory
Okay.
and the other one, not so much.
Right.
And so the partner that's kind of pushing for it might really downplay the other person's concerns.
Right.
Just dismiss their feelings as, oh, you're just jealous or irrational.
Right. Or like, if you don't get on board with this,
Right. Or you don't really love me.
then like you're holding me back.
Yeah, this is like who I am. This is how I evolve. You see this. If you don't try this with me, it's over kind of thing.
A lot.
Yeah. And that's a huge red flag.
Totally.
Because it's like you're being emotionally coerced.
Right.
It's not a real invitation to explore another way of doing relationships.
Right. Okay. So let's talk about those ultimatums for a sec. I think it's really easy to go, well, that's just like a mean thing to do.
Right.
But like, what's actually happening there?
Right.
Why are people resorting to like these pressure tactics?
It's such an important question. And I think it speaks to like how complex human motivation really is.
Yeah.
So in some cases, you know, it might be coming from, like, they don't really understand what polyamory is.
Yeah.
Like, they see it as this is going to solve all our problems, or
Right.
this is the way we avoid having to actually deal with our issues.
Right. So it's like a Band-Aid
Exactly.
instead of like actually getting down to it.
And in other cases, it might be tied to their own insecurities, their own fears about commitment.
Right.
And so pressuring their partner into this type of relationship is a way to create distance
Right.
without actually having to face those fears.
Wow. That's really interesting. So it's not even necessarily about control. It's like just these like
Needs
unfulfilled needs that are like
coming out sideways
Yeah,
in
yeah.
a not so great way.
totally. And what about the impact on the person who's being pressured?
Oh, absolutely.
Like imagine,
It's huge.
you want to be monogamous, that's like your thing.
Yeah.
And they're telling you that that's wrong, or that
Yeah.
means you're not evolved, or that means you don't really love them.
Yes.
Like that just seems, that's going to be so damaging.
so damaging
Yeah.
to how you see yourself and to the relationship.
Totally. So it's no wonder that so many of these stories end in heartbreak,
Yes,
resentment.
absolutely.
And here's the thing that I think is so interesting. Sometimes it backfires on the person who's like initiating it.
It's true. And the research actually backs that up. You think, oh, you're the one who wants this. You must be ready.
Yeah.
But that's not always the case. They struggle with the jealousy. They struggle with feeling inadequate.
Right.
They feel overwhelmed.
It feels like they're selling a lifestyle that they haven't even quite like figured out how to
Right.
live themselves.
Yes. And it really drives home the point that polyamory, just like monogamy, requires so much more. You have to be emotionally mature, you have to know yourself,
Right.
and you have to have those communication skills, right?
Communication.
It's not just about saying, I'm polyamorous.
Right. Like checking a box.
Right, and
Right.
expecting it to all just kind of magically work itself out.
Yeah. It's constant work.
Yes.
Constant like self-reflection
Yes, open communication.
and communication.
Yeah. Probably even more so than in other relationship styles.
Right. And I think that gets lost in a lot of these conversations. Like it's just, oh, this is better or this is more evolved.
Exactly.
But it's not about the label.
It's about the people.
It's about the people in it
In the relationship.
and how much they're willing to
Give
show
them
up.
up.
Yeah.
Authentically and respectfully.
Yes. God, this is a lot. Okay, so we've talked about the pressure, the emotional fallout, consent,
Right.
like even the struggles of people who identify as polyamorous. Where do we go from here? It feels
Yeah.
like we've uncovered a lot of difficult truths about relationships,
Yeah.
communication, and self-awareness. What are some key takeaways you hope our listeners are reflecting on right now?
You're right. This deep dive has been heavy. I think the most important takeaway is the absolute necessity of mutual consent and respect in any relationship.
Yeah, so much of what we've unpacked comes back to respecting boundaries. How can our listener identify if their boundaries are being crossed when it comes to this topic of polyamory?
It's different for everyone, but a big one is that feeling of being pressured or having your feelings minimized.
Right.
If your partner dismisses your concerns or tries to convince you that your desire for monogamy is somehow less evolved, that's a huge red flag.
Yeah, it's like almost emotional blackmail.
Right.
Like you said before, if you loved me, you'd do this kind of manipulation.
Exactly. True love respects boundaries. And if your partner truly cares about you, they will prioritize your emotional well-being and be willing to work with you, not against you.
So what's the answer then? Is it ever possible for a couple to transition from monogamy to polyamory ethically and healthfully? Or are we looking at a recipe for disaster?
It is possible, but it requires a tremendous amount of open and honest communication,
Oh, yeah.
a willingness to confront your insecurities, and a deep respect for each other's needs. It's not about one partner converting the other. It's about evolving together.
So much easier said than done, right?
Yeah,
Especially when you're navigating all of these complex emotions and societal pressures.
absolutely. It's not a simple journey, and it's certainly not for everyone.
Yeah.
And that's okay. The beauty of relationships is there's no one-size-fits-all approach. What matters most is finding what feels authentic and fulfilling for both partners.
This has been an amazing deep dive. Thanks so much for walking us through it.
My pleasure.
And for you listening, we hope this conversation has given you some things to think about.
Yeah.
Maybe even spark some important conversations with your partner or friends. Whether you're happily monogamous, exploring polyamory, or somewhere in between, remember, your needs and your voice matter. Never be afraid to advocate for what feels right for you. Until next time, keep asking questions, keep learning, and keep diving deep.